those emotional deaths. So when he was saying a coward dies 1,000 deaths, it's those things that you don't do, those actions you didn't make, that regret, all those things that you have to live with because you didn't have the bravery to say what needed to be said, do what needed to be done. Welcome to the Lionz Den, episode 35. I'm Eddy.
I'm Daryl.
I'm Brad.
And this is Alex.
So the Four Musketeers are back together again.
Yes, we are.
We've had a couple episodes where been missing. We had holidays, all kinds of other stuff going on. So it's good to have everybody back. We amped our production value significantly.
Big time.
See our beautiful sign. It was my lovely wife that got me that actually for Christmas. So hopefully everybody's enjoying the new visuals. And we added our... Our church. But
it's there.
Some gospel there.
You'll enjoy it. It's good. I like it.
So, today we were going to talk about, there's a quote that has always resonated with me. It's probably one of the things that are nearest and dearest to my heart. It's definitely a way I try to live my life. When I originally heard it, and I just tried to find it. It was a civil rights activist that I heard it from, and I want to say it was Medgar Evers, but I just couldn't find the attachment to him. But the quote is, "A coward dies 1,000 deaths, a brave man dies but once." And when I heard it, especially at that time, really resonated with me. It came from Shakespeare, from Caesar. So, of course, Shakespeare was the originator of it. But when I heard it at that time, and we'll kind of get into the different meanings of it, but when the particular civil rights activist said it, they meant literally. So versus having a drink from a different fountain, not being able to vote, not being able to do your things as a normal human being, I'd rather die. And the coward dies 1,000 deaths, brave man dies but once. And so they were basically saying, I would rather die than deal with this stuff. Mm-hmm. We have to stand up for ourselves. We have to speak up. We can't take this anymore. So it really, really resonated with me. And that's the literal sense of it, which is literally dying. When Shakespeare said it, I think what he really meant was those emotional deaths. So when he was saying a coward dies 1,000 deaths, it's those things that you don't do, those actions you didn't make, that regret, all those things that you have to live with because you didn't have the bravery to say what needed to be said, do what needed to be done, have those conversations. And it's something that really resonated with me because sometimes you hear different quotes that as soon as you hear it, you're like, ooh, yeah, I know exactly what that means. Yeah. And it just really resonated with me. And, vast majority of my conversations with people, regret is probably the number one thing that I hear from almost everybody. When it's kind of like the down times in their life or real depression modes or things that, people are really hurting over, 9 times out of 10, it's regret. And usually it's regret that something they didn't do that they wish they would have done. And you definitely get regrets where you did something you wish you didn't, but, more often than not, it's, I should have done this, I should have done that, I wish I would have said this, I wish I would have said that. And so when we talk about that quote, that was exactly what Shakespeare was talking about, that, you're living a little death every time you don't say or do that thing that that you're supposed to say or do. Because at the end of the day, it's you all alone in the bed, your head on the pillow, mulling that stuff over, and you're kind of slowly dying inside because that's just eating you alive that you didn't do that. Whereas just get it done with and either die on that sword or live on that sword. Because then you'll get to deal with it that time. Mm-hmm. And we've talked about this in a lot of different ways of kind of having those phantom conversations because you're not asking the questions. So is this relationship exclusive, or is it just us together? Are we friends still? Are we not friends still? Does my job value me? Does it not? All these different things that we're so afraid to ask that question. Then we start having that inner dialogue because, well, they did do this, so I must be important, but they also did that, so maybe I'm not. That's that kind of inner dialogue that I think Shakespeare was referring to. I know for you, Brad, you just came back from your wonderful honeymoon.
I did, yeah.
And Key West was kind of a pain point for you in the past. Did you feel any of that when you went, or was that kind of absolved because of what your situation is?
It was weird because so 10 years ago I went down to the Keys basically to get away from everything. My marriage was failing, and it was kind of a big middle finger to everything and everyone, and I just left, grabbed some stuff, and put my house up for sale and bounced. I kind of had some work lined up down there, and I went down to clear my head, and it was, I kind of think everybody at some point in their life should do that. I really do.
Step out a little bit, step out of the box.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a great experience for me. I learned a lot. I learned how to make friends again, just kind of do things, survive on your own, like weird things that you wouldn't think, but when you're in a relationship forever, and then all of a sudden you're not, those are things you have to kind of relearn. And it was the place I did it in. It was a real dark time in my life, and I was only there for a short while, and I ended up coming back home. And I didn't realize, and that was 10 years ago, I didn't realize, being there now would affect me like it did. And it was, I was like, I'll go check out my old apartment. And we went up to it, and it was just this wave of emotion. And I've come so far in these 10 years, and my life is so drastically different. I've, new beautiful bride. My life, work is good, life is good, my friends are good. I'm in such a much better place than I was 10 years ago, and it was just overwhelming, almost, But through those journeys, and it's almost like that quick flashback of everything I've gone through in those 10 years.
Sure.
And a lot of the stuff you talked about, whereas even learning relationships with people and that inner dialogue of instead of just coming out and asking somebody, what are we doing here? Sometimes you take the coward's way out. Mm-hmm. You don't ask those questions, and you answer them to yourself, and you don't really get that answer, and you kind of die inside when you find out that person's dating somebody else, or that mm-hmm. person's, and you're like,
sure,
what the hell, So it was interesting of just kind of standing on this corner and looking at this building and just having this whole just wave of everything, come over me. So it was great to go there. It was great to be back. It was great to almost kind of go there now, and for lack of a better term, just internally kind of, it was like a personal triumph.
Yeah.
To see how far I'd gone.
So for you, it really wasn't a regret. It was more.
It wasn't a regret, but there was that flash of everything I went through in these 10 years, of the learning, of the things I regret, of things that I did and things that I should have done. And it was almost like, that movie montage of just, it all comes flooding back. So do I regret going there either time? No, not at all. But there's definitely just kind of that wave of things that happen in this time span of growth that you do overthink again.
Sure.
That are kind of brought up. So, regret was definitely there from that stuff.
Yeah. For you, Daryl, when you hear that quote, what does it mean to you?
So I look at it in a couple ways. When I hear the quote, the first thing I go to is that, from the military standpoint of it, if you're a coward, you die 1,000 deaths. A brave man dies once, because that brave man is going to stand up against something that is in opposition to him, and you may triumph or you may fall to it, mm-hmm. but it'll be that one time. Like you said, with the several deaths on the coward standpoint, you die emotionally because you revisit that. And if you look at it in history and in just sociology with people, you see people have that regret of things that they did, that they didn't address the way they wanted to address it, and it eats them up repeatedly and repeatedly. And that's those 1,000 deaths that it's being referred to in the quote. So when I hear it like that, that's exactly how I look at it. It is the regret, the I woulda, shoulda done it this way that we have to deal with, and you don't know how somebody's going to take that. You know, that's how people fall into depression or anxiety, because a situation can give you anxiety. Somebody could do exactly what you did, go back to a turning point in their life, right? A decision point, and revisit it in a better spot, and it could take them back, and it could be negative. It could take them back, and it can be like, hey, man, this is where I came from. So I look at it both ways. I'm happy that with your experience, it was like, man, this is where I came from, you know. And you look back and you said, and I agree with you, that I think people should step out of the box sometimes because it changes your perspective. Because if we're looking at everything from the same position all the time, it's hard for us to see what it looks like if I was sitting in your chair looking this way, or in Alex's chair or in Eddy's chair. So when it's so many layers to the quote that, like, if you think about it continually, you'll keep coming up with different sides of it. That'll be interesting.
No, I agree.
Yeah,
definitely. Alex?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's I try to live, you know, every day where I kind of take my lumps in stride. You know, I think that kind of goes with that quote. You know, anybody who knows me, I try to be the type of person that when I'm in the wrong or I'm in the right, not necessarily the right, if I'm in the wrong, take the lump on it and kind of move on. Just because of that exact thing. You know, I've never really been able to put it into a quote, which is, I guess, the difference between me and Shakespeare. You know, but
the only
that might be it.
That might be
a couple big writings. Kind of popular.
Well, yeah, of course. You know, so I think for me, it kind of hits super home. You know, it's kind of a constant reminder of, you know, that's the thing you should be doing. You know, when you face a challenge, when you face something you don't like looking at in life, you kind of go head on and you take it on the chin and keep on going. Yeah,
I mean, like when I first heard it, it just kind of rocked my world. I was like, wow, does that resonate? Because as soon as you hear it, you kind of start dissecting, well, what exactly does that mean? So coward dies 1,000 deaths. Well, you only really die once in your life. So what is he talking about? And, you know, he's really talking about those emotional deaths.
The pain, like severe pain.
That's the way, you know, I mean, you die once, you're dead, but to die 1,000 times, that's extremely painful. And that's kind of it. And it really is almost the mental side of things that I think we all put ourselves through, you know, depending on the situation. Like you said, end of the night, it's just you with those thoughts in your head on a pillow, and it's those 1,000 deaths replaying, you know, no matter what it could be any situation, really. So you're right. Like the more you kind of dive into that quote, it just keeps...
It's deeper and deeper and deeper, Yeah,
and I mean, when we talk about faith, that's something that... You know, why is faith important? Why is having a belief in a creator, you know, all these things? I think it's really important because it kind of establishes a moral compass for you. And I'm not saying that you couldn't have that moral compass without that, but, you know, I think once you understand that I was created and I was created with a purpose and that purpose is good, you know, that's kind of your north. When you don't have that, you start those comparisons to other things, which is usually going to be other people, which can be all over the place. So, you know, I know people that hang out with horrible people, but they're the least horrible. Right. So they're like, hey, I'm in good shape. I could be way worse than these guys. You know, I'm not a drinker, but I've been with plenty of people that drink, and I'm nowhere near as addicts. That's like the big thing. I'm nowhere near as bad as this guy. I'll drink nowhere near as much as that guy. Or I could still go to work and I could still function. I still got a job. And you're like, okay, it's a messed up barometer to have. You know, I think when you don't have that, the moral compass gets real complicated. Yeah. And I think that's kind of what Shakespeare is alluding to, that even if you don't necessarily have a faith, have a religion, know that or believe that there's a God, you still have that internal moral compass of feeling like shit. And that goes for anybody, unless obviously you're a sociopath or a psychopath. But I mean, we all make decisions that we're like, oh shit, you know, that should have went a different direction on that one. And like I said, the real resonating one is those words that aren't said, those questions that aren't asked, because what we usually create those to be are far worse than the reality.
That is a big part, yeah.
You know, we have a good friend that, you know, is kind of in the dating world, and was kind of telling me how it goes, and this shit was scary. I was like, oh my God, you know, it's like a DM, or you get hit up through somewhere, there's a hookup, and I'm like, okay, and then what? Well, that's kind of it. And you're like, okay, so what if you want to see the person? Well, it's really not for that. So I'm like, oh, well, then where do you meet? And it was like, I don't know. I mean, it's kind of what's popping right now, you know. It's just kind of like a hookup thing, and well, like, how do you know if that's what that person wants? And well, I don't know. I mean, you know, send me a picture of boobies, so I'm assuming that's what they want.
Yeah, it's a lot of unsaid stuff with the current climate of, like, I guess it's like speed dating, but it's like super high speed. You know, it's not a lot of
warp speed dating.
Yeah, yes. It's not a lot of socialization or conversations that are had. And with anything, I think like they need to slow it down.
Yeah.
But nobody's really doing that. Like it's
Well, it's like, have a conversation. Like, at least there should be like a preformed checklist. If you can't answer these questions about this person, you might be moving a little too quick.
That's
like,
very true.
And I mean that because that means you've had communication. You've been talking. You know that person. You understand that person.
Well, and I mean, I definitely don't want to use the one person example of the entire society, but I mean, I hear it a lot. He's not even close to the only person that I hear that's kind of what's going on. I don't know if connection is the real point of dating anymore. I think it's more a hookup.
Well, it's more superficial because the way like all of these like dating is on apps now, and anything that's app based is very superficial. So if you look at the popular dating apps that's out there, it's usually like a card with somebody's face on there, where they chose the best picture of themselves or a series of their best pictures, and then they post their most interesting features and hobbies and stories, and it's like, look at me, I do all this cool stuff, like me, swipe right. You know, all of that's fake. That person that you see on that card is not that person that you're going to encounter when you go to meet this person. And it's really hard to get people to see that it's fake, because like, it's not, it's right there, I'm looking at her,
right.
I'm looking at him, you know. So but when you really look down at it, you can't judge people off a card,
For sure.
you know.
Thankfully, it's been a long time since I've been on dating apps, but it had gotten to, and I used them for, you know, a while, but it had gotten to a point where it was like, it almost got down to just the meet and greet of like, it wasn't even like, hey, I'm going to plan an elaborate date with this person.
Right.
It was like, let's just go get coffee because I know you don't look like your pictures. You know, like, it just, I became so jaded with it. I was like, let's just go grab a quick drink. Let's see if you can even hold a conversation together. And then maybe we'll move on to like a real date, you know, and that's really what it became. And it's crazy that even I'm saying these words, but that's how it was. And,
No,
and I would meet people like for like a drink. I'd be like, there's no fucking way, you know, like, and then I would meet people and be like, oh, you're cool. Like, let's hang out, you know, like, and, but yeah, it was, I couldn't imagine it now because that was how long ago. And now it's just, you know, everything is superficial.
Yes,
so
superficial.
Nothing's real. And so if you start a relationship, I always said, you know, like the old school way of meeting somebody, your eyes meet across a room or what, like that's completely lost with internet dating. Because you swipe on somebody, they swipe on you, and then you spend like 5 minutes scouring their social media to see what you can figure out about them. And then you go meet in person, and inevitably they never look like any of those pictures.
No.
So that initial meeting is always kind of like you know.
Or they do look like the person that they showed you, but there's nothing else there.
Right.
So they're hollow.
Correct.
You know.
Yep.
So like, okay, yeah, the pictures match, but then there's absolutely nothing else. There's no conversations, no contest, no content either. Like it's just empty. You know?
Yeah, and then so you meet like that, and then now you're trying to form some sort. If you are interested, you hope they are too, but because this whole thing has been built off of piss poor communication, you're not really talking to the person. So then it goes back to what we're talking.
Well, and that's kind of my point. Is you have all of that going on top of what's the real intention,
right?
You know, what do both parties want? Is it a hookup? Is it a relationship? Is it the date? What have you? And just kind of talking to people, it gets the hookup quick. So, and I'm kind of like, hey, what was said between here and there, and not a whole lot, you know, it was just like, hey, let's meet and
what's there to talk about?
Right. And it's
silly
just,
Eddy.
You know, and it goes back to my thing is, you know, so I don't believe after however many millions, billions of years that we've been people that we've completely, you know, evolved to a point where everything is just, you know, hookups. I think we still need that relationship. We still need that connection. Yeah. We still need that unity, all these things. And it's not just dating apps. It's in our politics. It's all over. And I really think it kind of goes back to that a coward dies 1,000 deaths, a brave man but once is it's so normalized that nobody wants to be that person of, oh, wait a second. What's your intention here?
Right.
You know, what are you looking for out of this? Hey, you want to go meet coffee? Just so I know, what are you kind of looking? Because if you say that, then now you're pushy or needy or whatever the hell.
Yeah, oh, this guy's weird. You know? Like,
because he asks questions.
Yeah, like,
I mean, it's really freaky when you think about it.
Yeah. The thing with the brave man part of that is that what comes with bravery, whether, you know, regardless of gender, anybody who's doing it, whatever, is a level of uncomfortableness. You know, because in my understanding, bravery a lot of times is very closely aligned with a form of stupidity, not ignorance. But stupidity.
Wants to be clear.
Yes. So people who are brave are not dumb.
Correct.
You can be a little bit stupid. And I've been victim to that for certain things. Like when people like jumping out of planes, people are like, oh, that's really brave that you did that. I'm like, no, it's a little dumb. Right. It's stupid.
Or riding motorcycles.
Yeah, riding motorcycles.
Yeah.
That's I could never do that. That's brave. I'm like, no, it's stupid. I could die. But I do it, you know, and I'm happy when I'm doing it. Right. So I'm comfortable in that field. We all are comfortable in that field that makes other people uncomfortable.
For sure. So
when you transfer that to dating, to politics, saying those things that are going to come with some backlash, you know, that's not going to be widely accepted, is the bravery part of it, because you're going to have to take that, a little bit of a lashing, but you will get whatever you're trying to get out of it, whether it's happiness, excitement, getting a point across, whatever it is. Finding out if this person is worth your time, if this topic is worth your time. In politics, if you just ask the real questions, a lot of times I feel like they can get to the meat and potatoes or whatever the topic is and determine whether they want to support a certain candidate, want to support a certain bill. Just ask the real questions. What are we trying to do this for?
Right.
What is this bill really trying to do? Because whatever the bill says on the front is not what it really supports, because otherwise they wouldn't be 675 pages long after they said this is a bill to ban this. This is a bill to increase the usage of whatever it is. And then beneath that, 600-some pages of BS that they done jammed in there. You know?
Right.
So that's what I would say. Okay, if this bill is to support this, why is it so many fucking pages?
Right.
Like, what are these pages?
Right.
Like, but nobody wants to do that because everybody has to, in dating and politics, everything lines up. You're trying to keep favor.
Right.
You know?
Trying to play that game.
Play that game. I don't want to say no because I might need them to vote for some shit that I'm pushing for later. Or I don't want to say, what are we meeting for? Because then she might swipe, what's the other way? Left.
Right.
She might remove that connection. Right. You know? So that's where that bravery part comes in, is being uncomfortable or being prepared for outcome it's not the outcome that you wanted.
Definitely.
You know?
I think being prepared for that outcome, it takes a while to get to that point. It took me a while to get to that point but you kind of, once you've died 1,000 deaths over and over and over and over again, you're finally like, I can't do it anymore. So you learn to be like, I got to ask the questions. I got to know, hey, where are we taking this? What are we doing here? You know, and even maybe like from a work front, you know, you might be at a job and, you know, busting your ass and whatever, and you're not going anywhere. Like, sometimes you got to ask, like, what am I doing here? What, you know, what's the end goal for me here? You know, you don't ask those questions, you don't get the answers. And it takes some stones to do that sometimes. So, but I know for me personally, like, you eventually get to the point where you're like, fuck it, I'm going to do it. You know, and
for sure.
Ask those questions.
And I think most people ultimately do get there. It's the damage they go through to get there.
That's
I mean,
a good point.
for me personally, cowardice is not doing what internally your moral compass is saying to do. You know, bravery is doing it in spite of the fears, as Daryl was just talking about, of, is this going to offend the person? Am I on a different page than this person? Am I pushing my luck? Am I going to scare this person off? What have you? You know, that's really where that bravery comes from. But, you know, when Shakespeare was talking about that, he obviously had experienced it and knew that, okay, well, how many times are you going to do that to yourself? And what I honestly find super ironic about it, and again, when I heard that quote, I was extremely young, and I've tried to live my life by that ever since, is to your point. So let's say it's a relationship and you don't have those, you don't ask those questions. It's the modern dating that we're talking about now, and you're hooking up, and now feelings are, you know, growing, and you're not getting any clarity on anything, and you're a month, 2 months in. So now you have an emotional attachment, and now the stakes got even higher because the hope, the want, the expectations, all those things have done nothing but grow. And so now it's even harder to ask, hey, where do you see this going? Is this all it is? Is there a future in this? What have you? So I think the cowardice makes you die 1,000 deaths because it just gets worse and worse and worse. And then you're more afraid and more afraid and more afraid to do that thing because you've made it into a monster of this big, huge thing of, oh, shit. You know, this much time has gone by, or you know, whatever. I've experienced it. There's tons of people I know where friendships got lost because lost connection for whatever reason. Sometimes just life happens.
Well, that was just miscommunication. Yeah.
Miscommunication and misunderstanding, and no one was like, "Hey, wait a second, man. When you said that, is this what you meant, or do you mean this?" You know, you don't say anything, and you have that inner dialogue, and now time has passed. So you get 2-3 years and you're like, I miss Brad. You know, I'm going to give Brad a call. Shit, it's been a couple years though. You know, I wonder what he's been up to. And then there's that death. Yep. And then a week passes or another 6 months pass, and you keep doing that to yourself over and over and over again. Instead of just having that one death of, hey, Brad, what's up? How have you been, man? It's been a couple years, and you have those conversations. And to both of your point, for Brad and Daryl, may not go the way you want it to go. You know, maybe, you know, moved on, different friend groups, different interests, where you just don't connect on that same level. But then you know, live that death and you move on.
Yeah. Excuse me. I was about to say that, like, even if it doesn't go the way that you want it to go, you still gain something. You gain the information of knowing where you're at in that situation with that person, with that group of people, or whatever it is. You still come out with some information that can be used positively.
For sure.
You know what direction to move in now.
Absolutely.
You know, so that's the bravery part of it. It's just like if you're moving, doing some kind of land navigation, driving, walking, whatever, and you don't know where you're at, and you just pick a destination, direction to go in. It might be the wrong direction, but at some point you're going to find out it's the wrong direction. Hopefully sooner than later.
Right.
And then once you find that out, it's not a bad thing. Like, shit, I've been going the wrong direction this whole damn time.
You have to turn around.
I have to turn around.
Right.
So you're still winning.
Right. No, absolutely.
You're going to be late, or you're going to be wherever. If you're moving somewhere, you're going to be late to wherever you're getting to, later than you thought. But Okay, we found out that actually happened to us when we went to
Manistee.
Yeah,
dude.
I didn't even think about that. So I'm like, wait a second, this happened.
That happened to us till 2:30 in the morning,
Yes.
bro.
Well, this is it. Wait a second, this is not it.
We were walking down the side of the hill, and Eddie's like, I think I hear water. We're like, yeah. We started like hitting with the flashlights, and it's like a straight drop.
Cliff.
And one of us was like, I mean, it might have been Daryl. He's like, I'll hoof down there if you want, and we can see. And the next day we came back, and it was the furthest thing from the spot.
Yeah.
The furthest thing from the spot. There's trees everywhere. It was a straight drop to the river.
So we learned from being wrong. Like, this is not where we're supposed to be.
Yeah.
And we figured it out,
Definitely.
And I went into that not even thinking about that scenario until I got halfway through saying it. I'm like, it just happened.
No, for sure. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I would say, and again, I can't speak for everybody. Just, I mean, I guess everybody has different mentalities towards stuff, but it's never, ever, 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 ever as bad as you made it.
So I got all 10 of those evers.
Yeah, I was just,
Get your fill today or something? You're not hungry? I got all 10 of those.
It will never be as bad as you make it. That monster will never be as bad as you've made it in your mind. And again, it's only going to get bigger the more you let that monster feed. And I can't express that enough to people that don't do that to yourself. And it does suck. I mean, there's been plenty of times I've had to come with my tail between my legs and, hey, sorry, I didn't look at it that way. And, I seen something different and I apologize. That sucks. But it's also, I mean, we talked about confession in some of the earlier ones. It's also so freeing because you're letting go of all those debts. You don't have to die anymore over that. Right. You just take that one and you move on and, hey, that sucked, but you're not having that internal dying over and over and over again because, man, I really wish Alex knew this, and man, I feel so bad that this is what he thinks, and that's not the case, or whatever. It's brutal. It's just, for me, it's just such a horrible feeling. Or, you're at a job and you want to say something and you don't, and no, I don't want him to think this or that. It just becomes a monster, and it goes like that with anything, relationships, jobs, whatever. I mean, you guys all got to deal with my buying tendencies. I mean, that's why I do it. But Daryl and I talk about all that. Daryl's like, send it, just get it. Even my wife to this point is just because she knows if I don't, she's going to have to hear about it for the next 4 or 5 days.
Mine
She's just
too,
like,
yeah.
I'm over it, just buy it. Because I'd rather deal with the financial irresponsibility than you not shutting up over and over again for the next 4 or 5 days.
It's so true.
No, and I mean, there's so many aspects of our life that are like that, where you just beat yourself up about it. You internally fight over it over and over and over again. And next thing you know, you have a monster. And a lot of times now it's the monster. So screw that. I'm not. And then you just pull the plug. I'm not going to do it.
Right.
Which means you're kind of in a eternal cowardice of just dying over and over again, because when we talk about God, life is situated where you're not getting away. So you can avoid it for a month, a year, 2 years, 3 years. Sooner or later,
It's coming.
It's coming. And it doesn't have to be necessarily that person or that thing, but that regret, that death is coming.
Right.
And once it comes, it's going to come again. And it's going to come again. And it's going to come again. So, a lot of times when I talk to people that, well, I'm not sure how he or she feels, and I'm just, if I say this, they don't feel the same. I love you is a big one like that. I don't want to be the first one to say it. Like, okay, well, what's the competition there?
Yeah. Right.
Well, what if they don't feel the same way? Well, then they don't.
Right.
It's not supposed to be, well, I only love you if you love me back. I mean, God, Jesus didn't die for us, and I love you so much, but hey, I'm only going to go on the cross if you're going to be willing to do the same thing. Yeah. He would have had nobody.
Right.
I mean, it would have just been him. loving somebody or having feelings towards somebody is a blessing. It shouldn't have to be, I only feel this way if it's reciprocated. Your truth is your truth. Now, I'm not taking away the fact that sucks. I love you and it's crickets. I get it. But one, you don't know that person's process. They might be uncomfortable saying it. They might not be at that point yet. They might have a bad history with it. There's so many things that go along with that doesn't necessarily mean they have the same feeling. But let's say, God forbid, they don't. Why would you want to stay in that? Why would you want to continue being in a one-sided relationship where you have feelings that the other person doesn't?
Right.
Because you're afraid to have that conversation.
Well, to your analogy, that puts you on the right path of like, yes, this sucks. I've gone the wrong way, or I've been, in this too deep, but at least now I know I can start going this way instead of that way.
Definitely. Are you looking about something you're going to say?
No, I mean, I think when we're talking about like the bravery aspect of it, I think the bravery usually comes without recognition, and I mean, I think that's the hardest pill for people to swallow with it, and makes it so hard to be brave because as people, we're very selfish, and usually we do things for impure intention. So bravery has to come from a place of big self-motivation, whether that's saying the things that need to be said or keeping your mouth shut when you wish you'd want to talk, whatever the case may be. It's doing the things that most people aren't willing to do because they're not willing to put themselves in a vulnerable position.
Right.
And I think being a coward is tough because, if you're a person that stops every single day and you buy a coffee and that coffee, costs you $5, at one time you may try stealing it and you realize you don't have to pay $5 and you steal it the next time and you realize, fuck, I'm saving a lot of money every week. And that bleeds into every aspect of your life. So if you're a coward in one area in your life and you find the shortcut and the cheat and you lie to yourself for 6 months about how you feel or what you want to say, you're going to do that everywhere. And before you know it, you're going to wake up and everything's going to be a lie because you've allowed yourself to just sell yourself on what you're okay with and what you're not.
No, I mean, you hit it on that. I mean, again, that's where your faith, your moral compass is so important because maybe Starbucks and this shit don't cost $7. It costs like 20 cents. So I'm just going to take it.
Swiper.
Because they're screwing me, so why shouldn't I screw them? And that could come to dating, too. This person's going to screw me over, so I'm getting mine before they get theirs.
I've never understood
Bernie Mac had a joke about that. I got mine. You better get mine. Yours. So,
Same aspect,
And again, I really think that's what Shakespeare was talking about because you can play all that game and you could fool yourself. You got over this, and that. At some point, that devil's coming out where you die that death, where you're looking at the mirror or you're sitting in bed and, I'm an asshole or I'm a piece of shit or whatever. And we won't get into in this podcast. The biggest thing, I mean, I see thing after thing after thing about self-esteem. I read about it. I see it. I hear it talked about repeatedly, how low people's self-esteem is. That's where that self-esteem comes from. When we're talking about cowardice and bravery, that bravery comes from pride. Your pride is what builds your self-esteem. So when you continually are doing the thing that your internal compass is telling you to do, you're being that brave person. Not only are you dealing with the issue, but you're building your own self-worth.
Right.
Because you're realizing that, I like this person, but I love them. They don't feel the same way. I deserve to be with somebody that is going to reciprocate it and feels the same way I do. I'm going to move on. And you don't have so much pain because it's not all associated with that self-esteem, because that's kind of what it becomes. Well, am I not good enough? Why don't they like me? I bet they would like this person, or all that stuff. You kind of get lost on that. So, it's a really, again, it's one of those quotes that always resonated with me. It's really at home. So I've tried to live my life by. I hope it's something our viewers or our listeners could kind of consider. I don't know what else you want to add to it, Daryl.
I mean, nothing too much more. You hit it on the head. It's something I think after hearing that quote, that if it's your first time hearing it, that you should consider it and give it some thought, and give it a lot of thought, because it's different every time you approach it. And don't like do anything like immediate or brash or anything like that, but dissect that quote a little bit and see if it's any way that it can help you out in life or help others out. And just, it might not be in the moment right then. Maybe something will happen later in life and that quote will come back to you. And you already give it some thought, and it can be something that can make you, move forward, progress in whatever the situation is. That's what it does for me, to be honest.
Yeah, I agree. I think, if you're in a situation where that quote kind of applies to you, be the braver person. Ask those questions. Internally, if you're dying 1,000 deaths every night when you lay your head down, then you need to change that. And if asking a question is getting an answer will change that, then ask that question. Get that answer so you're not going the wrong way.
Yeah, I'm going to end it in a little different direction. For those of you that know us, excuse me, and talk to us about the podcast, you know that when we do this every single week, we don't have, Eddy will come up with some ideas that he's got. We kind of all come up with some ideas on things we want to kind of talk about, but there's no set script.
No.
And the reason we do that is because you get really raw and pure conversations that aren't prejudged with an idea or direction where we're headed, which is why you get those different perceptions of each conversation. So I think it'd be really cool if there's people out there that are listening that have like a quote that means something to you that you'd like to see brought into a conversation where you can get some different perspectives on, put it up, give us some quotes you guys want to, hear us talk about. And, I'd love the opportunity to kind of explore it too. So, it'd be something fun for us to do a week, if somebody's got some ideas.
For sure.
I like that. I do want to say one more thing. When you when anybody listening to this, when you do dissect that quote, a big thing is going to be understanding bravery and cowardice, because the definitions of those are different amongst different people.
Definitely.
So what I've learned in life of what some people think is cowardice behavior is, and sometimes it's not. And the same thing for bravery too. What somebody may think is brave, I may not think is brave.
Right.
But that doesn't mean it's not. That just means my perspective on it could be different.
Yeah, for sure.
So I would, when I say look into the quotes, really dig into it, what it means to you at first sight, and then break down the words and the true definitions of the words. Because when you look at it after you look up the definitions, I understand bravery. As we said right here, I pulled up Webster's definition of bravery, and it's facing or enduring an uncomfortable situation is the first definition. Another one is facing and enduring an uncomfortable situation or action without showing fear. I disagree with the second one.
Yep. Totally disagree with the second one.
Because the factor of fear does not subtract whether it's brave or not.
Right.
So that's where I was like, well, you do have different definitions of it, which will change your perspective on how that quote, stands within whatever situation you're applying it to. But I would do some more reading, some more research, and really break it down to its true form. Because for me, bravery has nothing to do with fear.
Right.
Fear can cause bravery. It can increase. That's when you see parents save their kids. People, the NFL guy, he just saved his kids. He couldn't really swim.
Yeah, I saw
He's
that.
in the ICU right now.
I saw that.
I apologize. I know his name. I can't call it.
Manning?
No. It's
Hillis.
Hillis.
Yes. Bingo.
He, did a brave act and saved his children and ended up pretty much drowning. And he's in the ICU. So I know that there was some fear involved in that.
I guarantee you that dude was scared shitless.
Yeah, fear for himself, most likely more so fear for his kids.
For his kids,
Sure.
absolutely.
And then it caused him to act. So we can't say that it's not brave because he had a moment of fear.
Yeah, so you've been in war, you've been in
I was scared as
the
shit.
thick of it. Was there fear there?
Scared as shit so many times, and I've never not said that.
Yeah.
I think I mentioned this on here before. I had a friend that got in his first firefight on my second deployment, and I was all excited for him. And I came and I was giving him high fives, man, congrats, you got in your first firefight. And he didn't want to shake hands or nothing. He was like, man, listen, if I don't ever have to do that shit again in my life, I will be perfectly fine. And I was like, I respect that.
And I was just going to say, to me, that's bravery.
Yeah. That is.
I mean, that is exactly
I
bravery.
respected that. He did what he had to do in that moment, but he was like, if I ever that would be great.
Yeah, I mean, I really feel like bravery is, like I said, saying that thing, doing that thing that might not be the most popular, but is your personal truth, regardless of how someone's going to take it. That's hyper male testosterone going on in that environment. And he's like, I don't slap my hand because I don't want to ever do that shit again. That's, to me, the pinnacle of bravery.
Well, and that guy was brave the whole time because that's not a fear that he got after the gunfight was over. I'm sure the first time he heard the crack of the first round coming, it was something that I'm sure for everybody there was fear. And he still did his job. He still went through it. And at the end of it, could have been like, yeah, man, that's sick. And, like you said, no, it was, hey, man, good if I don't ever have to do that again.
Right.
It's incredible.
Yep.
Well, thank you, everybody, for tuning in. We'll see you on the next one. Again, please share, subscribe. Love to see you guys again, and let some people know we're out there.
Yep. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.